everyone. This is Anica Mann from The Citizen, and today I have hopped on this video to talk to someone very interesting. As you know, I run this humble page called Delhi Houses, and today, somehow through The Citizen, Delhi Houses gets to talk to Jaipur Houses. We have Bharat with us today, and Bharat, please tell us everything that you do alongside Jaipur Houses.
Right. Hi, and thanks for having me. Thanks to Khyati and Anica for having me over and talking to me about Jaipur Houses. So my name is Bharat Singh. I started this page on Instagram called Jaipur Houses with the idea of kind of creating an archive or a document of all these old houses and structures and cenotaphs and everything kind of forgotten in the old city of Jaipur and around. And I initially wanted to do it outside of the walled city because the walled city being this UNESCO World Heritage Site, I presume that, there was a lot of conservation and heritage management and preservation of these structures happening inside. Slowly, as and when I kind of started this project in 2021-22, after checking out Delhi Houses and Calcutta Houses, which was a huge kind of inspiration, motivation for a procrastinator like me. So it just kind of put me and gave me a little bit of focus as to the need of doing something like this. And of course, all of us had time during COVID to take a little break off our regular work and pursue these things. So I was actually born and brought up in Jaipur, but I've lived in a lot of cities around India, in Calcutta, in Bombay, in Delhi for some months. So I've been lucky enough to have a decent kind of exposure when it comes to India and these old cities that have a lot of architectural influence of different people and communities of India. So fortunately, I had that exposure. And when I shifted back to Jaipur in 2016-15, I started working in something similar in terms of conservation. So rather than do the conservation of heritage sites and structures, I was working with an uncle of mine who owns this camp close to Jaipur where we are protecting hectares of Aravali forest, which is also a sort of, a conservation of a jungle that we were trying to do. We were trying to protect and adopt these elephants and camels that were used in weddings. So the entire process of me trying to, work in this field of providing a little bit of context in terms of someone young, someone from urban India rather than the grassroots also, which is, it's interesting because a lot of people in Rajasthan from the grassroots level, from villages are kind of doing this work. So I think it was important for someone, also an urbanized Indian to kind of get into it. And that kind of brought feeling of conservation in me when I started working with my uncle with animals and in the jungle. And like I said, I've stayed in these different cities, and these cities are very rich in the cultural heritage that they have, including the tangible and intangible. That means the built and the recipes and, the different sorts of folklore that's associated with these cultures. So yes, in 2021-22, I used to go for these runs around the city, and I used to just stop and take pictures of old houses and things I found pretty. It was a little tricky at the time because people may sneak a lot of times, and people would be like, "Oh, stop taking pictures from the road."
I have put myself a rule, like if it's a house on a main road where general passerbys, without getting and deliberately finding a house, if I can take it from the road level, I'm not like climbing anything. But if it is architecturally interesting and it's from the road level, it's in the public view, so I can take a photograph. So I allow myself that, but it's tricky. Sometimes I introduce myself like, "Hello, I'm the city creep."
Listen, and I don't mean for it to be like a boy-girl thing, but a boy going around and creeping around is way worse than a girl. That's why I always try and take a cousin, sister, or a friend of mine, because
that is true. That is true. I know. Yeah. I can see how they would just look upon boys as like, "Tum meri property lene aaye ho."
Especially like someone like me who looks very like, like, "Kya kar raha hai tu?" and all, they get very hassled. And then I play the academic card in कि मैं student हूँ और पढ़ाई कर रहा हूँ पुराने घरों का. So, I mean,
Yeah,
without
yeah.
trying to, I think a lot of people have a problem with you using their property or place for commercial things, which I think you and me both aren't at the moment, in terms of at least creating this document. Uh,
I think, yes, I think that is something that we have to be very conscious about. I also kind of went deep into as to why do people have such a problem of taking just architectural photographs. And it's a very important question to ask yourself when doing this project as well, I believe, because you want to be very conscious of other people's private property, private things, private spaces, right? And I've understood that, it's sad that there are so many complications in the ownership of houses and the buildings and all of that, that sometimes it can be very tricky. So it has happened, for example, that I've taken a photo and it's right on the public view. It's at a red light, and you can see a gate of a home, and it's a stunning gate. And in fact, when I posted it, I got a message from someone from Karachi who had a similar gate with two parrot patterns, and that was quite a popular design, I believe, in the 60s, in the 50s and 60s for gates in iron. Anyway, the family contacted me and said, you need to immediately take that down. And immediately I took that down, but then I did share with them. I was like, I'm so sorry, it was at a red light, but I've immediately taken it down. But these are the messages I got appreciating your gate, and they're like, oh, actually, thank you so much. But, things can get so complicated within, so it's best to just stay out of that. But keep documenting, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's where I think it's just a matter of communication, because I mean you must have also faced this when you kind of gently explain it to the people uh, who live in these houses and stuff. I think more often than not they've agreed with me and said, okay, why don't you come in and they got more excited and kind of
Yeah.
almost it was an encouragement for them to show their house. So it's also, I think, a lack of communication, because there are a lot of people and these property dealers, and like you and me have, we've. I mean, I don't know whether you get this, but I'm almost feeling like I've become a realtor of the city, because there are only people calling me up and being like, "हम लोग को जगह चाहिए and हवेली चाहिए and rent पे ये चाहिए," which would annoy me a little bit initially, because I used to be like, I'm not a property listing site. Uh,
Yeah.
so these
Yeah.
these homeowners are kind of hawked and troubled also to some extent. So I think, I mean, maybe we kind of fill in that gap in which we can, give them a kind of platform to show their houses without having a commercial or rent sort of aspect attached to it. Uh,
Yes,
and
absolutely. There's so many times that people come and want to also show their home because they have some kind of a commercial interest. And while that may be, because there was like this, there is this wonderful, wonderful old style Heinz house built in the late
wow.
40s, early 50s in civil lines in Delhi. And I know Jaipur also has a civil lines. Civil lines is such a marker of like
And a
new
few Heinz houses
urbanism.
also, which is quite interesting.
Absolutely. So we share that so much, right? So this house is such a treasure, and it's owned by this absolute lady out of a novel, wearing her beautiful tussar sari, and she's been kind enough to Airbnb parts of the house.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yes, and it's right next to the Delhi University area, quite a beautiful area. Those sort of homes. And it is preserved as an original. Nothing is new. Everything is that, or whatever is new is probably from Delhi's old furniture market, Amar Colony. But those are great. But then, yes, people do reach out and they're like, oh, I'm looking for a house to live in. I'm looking for a house to buy. What is the address of this house?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's another one I wanted to ask you. How do you tackle that?
I
Because
literally do not say anything other than the fact that it is someone's private home. I am not allowed to divulge that information. I literally use that line all the time. I'm very conscious about, not releasing addresses and neighborhoods, because sometimes I think when you're also documenting these old homes, you're documenting an architectural style, you're documenting a house habit, something intangible that is a cultural marker that happens kind of in everyone's home. Like everyone makes chole chawal, everyone makes rajma chawal, but the kind of prep, what does a kitchen look like when you're making like that? It changes from. So sometimes, that story telling as you witness people's homes and the history of homes and the patterns of homes, that story keeps widening. So I wanted to ask you, you must come upon so many stories that a person who's welcomed you in their house and has like, this is this beautiful house, please document it. I have so many anecdotes about it. How do you choose? What story would you tell?
So initially, I mean, just to get back a little, I think that's where, I mean, Delhi houses and Jaipur houses takes a little bit of a turn from each other. Is that you add this very wonderful human element uh, to the.
Do you hear my dogs barking?
I can hear you. That's why I've kept all mine outside at the moment. They're too.
I am so sorry about that,
No, that's
but
fine. A
please
belly,
continue.
little belly. Uh, So, I mean, I think like I was saying, I think that's the time when your page and mine takes a little bit of a turn away from each other, in the sense that you would add this human element to your stories and to the story of the houses, which if you've noticed, have picked up a little bit now. But initially, when I started the page, it was very, and it was bringing out the inner nerd in me and just creating a hardcore document which included addresses and I mean stuff like that, which over the years now I've kind of realized is not the best way to do it, because there can always be a archive created at the back end. And for Instagram, like we do, I mean, it's always nicer to protect the address and the locality. Uh, and okay, having said that, coming back to what I think that it's just lots of times I go to these houses and there's nobody there to, I mean, ask even who built it, when it was built, who owns the house. They're just these abandoned houses lying, or Havelis lying in the city. So it just depends on who I'm speaking to. If I'm speaking to someone of the family, then obviously ask them for a few anecdotes, and I try and include that in the caption of stuff. But a lot of times it's asking a rickshaw wala on the road because there's no one there, or the local pan wala or the chai wala who have their stall outside on that street, that what the story is. So sometimes it's not from a direct source from the family. So I wouldn't really say there's anything fixed. Lots of times my pictures don't have any uh, writing at all. It's just a caption of sorts. So I think I play it by the ear. I just see every place that I go to and then kind of gauge. And depending also upon how much time I have, if I'm busy with the tourist season and I don't have time to kind of sit down and write something nice, or an anecdote, I do a little research. I try and look for books and any mention of these people or places in books written about Jaipur. So it's not really fixed in that aspect. But more and more, I think I've been getting a better response when I've included, some element of human beings and the people living there, and a human element to it, what you do. And I'm slowly kind of moving towards that. Uh, but I think, yeah, that's where, I mean, when I started, I wanted to be a hardcore document and academic and just have information and these, not make it very uh, natural or like human element, I keep saying. But that's what I kind of appreciated and what I've learned from yours. So I mean, that's the beauty of it. I'm also learning. Like you, I'm not at all a archaeologist or a designer, a photographer, an architect, or nothing. So it's also me
I
learning,
feel like I'm none of those as well.
or all of those, I feel.
Or all of it. It's so hard sometimes, because, but yes, I really do hear you. I think one of the things that I also kind of feel while doing this, and I wanted to ask you if you feel the same way, as and when you're going into people's homes, as and when you're looking outside your window more than inside your car when you're driving past, you're really observing the city, you're really listening to the city, you're really getting into um, certain aspects of the city that I feel reveal like the softer side of the city. When you go into people's homes, you become very cognizant of spaces, and this intangibility of of uh, cultural habits that we all share, food,
Yeah,
purity, impurity in the house, what sort of plants grow in the house, kind of you know every house has a different fasting regime as well,
right.
and fasting is such an Indian thing. There'll always be one person in the house that may be fasting for some, either it's a Lent or a Ramzan or a Navratra or a something else or whatever, and how that kind of creates a dish hevel in a house sometimes with food, like somebody else wants to eat something but somebody's fasting, so you need to be very conscious. So this house is such a story in itself, and I wanted to ask you, when you look at Jaipur and Delhi share that they both are this real historic city, and then there's quite the good idea of modernism of a new country, right? Where certain houses come about together. There is this, united sort of, we're going along together. When you're exploring the city from that angle of academia, you're looking at different decades, you're looking at different time periods. Do you feel that we are on the brink of sort of losing it all somehow?
I do, and without sounding very pessimistic, it's like I told you when I was in like working with animals in nature, it's almost the same kind of feeling that you get that, we've already lost probably about like 80% of what existed. And was having this conversation with someone in Jaipur only, they were telling me it's 70% is gone. What you're documenting is only the 30% that's left. And the rate with which it's being demolished, and forget outside the walled city, in the UNESCO World Heritage Site city of Jaipur, the walled city also, I mean, things are being brought down rapidly. So it does, I mean, it actually makes me feel a little gloomy when I'm walking around also, knowing that, lots of times you lose that sense of feeling of being in Jaipur very soon, probably in the next 20, 25 years. So, which is why, yeah, that's, I mean, at least maybe the main bazaars with the facades will be there, but the actual, I mean, fun of the old city is when you take walks through the rastas and the alleys and the gullies and what you see there. So these places, and I don't know whether it's, I mean, right or wrong of me to kind of judge these people on breaking their homes, because a lot of them, like you said, there are complications, there are lots of internal politics and ownership rights and all sorts of kind of stuff in these old houses, because a lot of times these havelis or houses have been passed down many generations to different families. I mean, for 300 years, it's been like, with 6 different families at one point. Everyone's claiming something. Nobody wants to put in money to preserve it. So it's almost like I mean, it does make me feel a little sad, but off late, I think with the kind of excitement and new energy that people are looking at heritage, maybe that's because of social media. And or maybe it's just sometimes it's cool as of now, and that's what I'm worried about, because I don't want it just to be a fad.
It's fine. I'll take it if it's cool for a moment. Like, get into it, guys. Go deep with it. And then I hope some people get inspired enough, because I really do think the future of like the fantasy for us is like the old city, the new city, the young city, all parts of the city and all its facets is preserved for everyone to kind of, enjoy together. And whether it's the home facades or the public buildings facades or whatever. But I think the future really lies in conservation architecture. And I think, this is where I don't blame so many people who just get, a builder to build it, for example, who now a lot of them are integrating a lot of good architects into their to make something that is actually, valuable. But the thing is, the problem is it's all becoming like anywhere in the world, right? And old homes, yes, they will age. They were built very quickly, like in Delhi and in Jaipur. Whenever you build a home, you're building it very quickly. Even if the houses were built in the 50s or the 60s, they must have been built quickly. The pipes will rust, the wiring will have to be changed. So I think conservation architects, if they try and take an interest in really helping at a mass level, only then something can be done as a city together. Because right now, even when you go to conservation architects or you recommend some conservation architect to a person who has a beautiful home, like if you would like to preserve it, this is someone who may be, a good technical expertise. They are so pricey, nobody can afford them. So I really do feel like the future is like people who study architecture, a good bunch of them go into conservation architecture and then go into it at a mass level, more in the parts of the city. It's also sad because a lot of avenues of our cities had so many homes, right? And those homes have now become shops. And those shops have now become commercial spaces, as it would in any city. Yeah. But if sometime in the future, the fantasy for the city, right? And I'd love to know your fantasy for your city is if conservation architects really participated in this kind of urban upgradation, evolution, the city would look much better, and we wouldn't have bada sa Nokia ka board everywhere.
So that's another point I wanted to bring out, and I've faced this also on the page when I've mentioned these things, and I don't know whether you've gotten it, and it really made me think about when we talk about these things about aesthetics and billboards and Nokia ka this thing, a lot of people bring in like you were saying, like the money aspect of it, of not everyone being of a certain background to be able to gauge that or be able to afford to change that. And so I've been called classist a lot of times that, oh, how dare you talk about the billboards being plastic when they can be, it's expensive and this is the cheaper route. And, you can't, which also, I mean, is interesting. It's an interesting discussion because where and that's where I feel like you mentioned again, policy and politics kinds of comes into play where uh, uh, these elected politicians kind of have to, or the government kind of has to support, but to what extent? Because a lot of these places are private homes.
Yeah, why should the government support a private thing? If it's yours, you got to
Yeah,
do it,
yeah.
A government can give you permissions.
But then what
Yeah.
about people who can't afford to?
That comes under things like, there are bodies like RWA's, Resident Welfare Association. If it is a residential space, that's where these private, or if it is a place that has commercial use and all that, there are generally smaller bodies over there, which also I don't blame them, because they're supposed to charge a fee to every member of that, but they don't. It's a
People
vicious
aren't
cycle.
paying, and yeah, it's kind of, it gets.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle without wanting to get into it. And yes, it is. That's why I said it's my fantasy. Conservation architects got into it at a mass scale. But having said that, I do identify what you said about you being called classist and all of that. If you talk about aesthetics, sustainability in such a way, and I'll take it. Yes, I'll take it if I'm being called that. I speak through Delhi houses about, romanticism and idealism in a way.
Yeah.
But I will take it that it is that. And honestly, a lot of people, they put these things on their facade to also hide a hole in the facade, right? And that's okay. Um, Large part of urban pop culture in cities is, remember those painted advertisements on the walls,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And from that it is evolved to flex boards, and from that it is evolved, so that I accept that evolution. But the city, yeah. But coming back to
Yeah.
your work in Jaipur and
Yeah.
your work in conservation and your work in Jaipur houses, one of the things I wanted to sort of understand is, and tell people at large, is if you had to describe the city, the pockets of the city, how would you describe it?
So
How would you describe the constitution of Jaipur as you've been exploring
I
it?
just use within the walls, which is the wall city, and beyond the walls, trying to make it sound a little poetic. But
Yeah,
I mean, there are these different puras, as you know, which Delhi also had, which are these suburban spaces, which like Amber or
yeah.
Chomu or Sanganer, which are spectacular, So, I mean, I'm actually now starting to really get into curating these little experiences where I can take people there. And that helps me kind of support Jaipur houses so that I'm not really losing money in it, but it just takes care of itself. I mean, I don't really want to earn money or make it like this huge money spinner or whatever. But I feel
Hmm.
it does support itself. It does give me a lot more motivation to kind of do it more. So, I mean, I divided between right now, as of now, it's just within the walls and beyond. And then slowly I'm trying to work on like the streets of Jaipur or or the gates of Jaipur. So it's a little haphazard as of now because I'm not. I've been doing it on my own with a little support from different people. There was this lovely girl called Yashasvi who was helping me. Uh, so as of now, it's just within the city and beyond. But slowly, I'm kind of trying to move around to these suburban puras, and then also kind of address streets and gates of Jaipur and stepwells of Jaipur, and all of this kind of the eventual aim. The fantasy for Jaipur houses is to have this in a book, and that initially was always I mean, this really nice, again, sounding classist, but this really nice aesthetic looking coffee table book, which will make great home decor also. If you have a nice house, it'll look nice and you're lying on a table or something. But I just feel once it gets onto a book, it just legitimizes it a lot. And not putting down Instagram, but I've always wanted the page to kind of go beyond just being an Instagram page, uh, and kind of legitimizing it a little more, so that you
Yeah.
can uh, pass more.
Yeah, no, I think I think the anthology that you are also collecting, right? Like it's not just architecture; it's also anthology. It's
Yeah.
the city's hidden histories, right? Coming in a book. Yeah, I would love to read that. Jaipur and now and can you comment a little bit about Jaipur now? There is so much happening in that city. Culturally, it looks like those fantastic movies that were made, and Jaipur has suddenly come to life. So tell us a little bit more about the life and city life of Jaipur.
So Jaipur, like any small two-tier city, was this really quaint town when I was growing up, where everyone knew everyone, and you could literally identify the cars that were going around. That, oh, this is that one, and this is this one. Or so it had this really nice, quaint, old world charm, which of course every city goes through and comes out of. And since the last probably 15 years, uh, we've kind of moved into the space of being a metropolitan. So Jaipur is, and I feel Delhi is also going through that. Cities like Bangalore have gone through it and gone back and become a complete metropolitan, where they've lost a large part of what the Bangalore fabric, kind of the cultural fabric, looked like. So Jaipur is in that stage right now, on a tipping point where it can go either way. But fortunately, there are lots of uh, residents of Jaipur and people coming from outside wanting to work for the city, uh, create these different foundations and NGOs which will help uh, people protect the walled city. So it's in a very interesting time as of now, Jaipur. And it's
Yeah.
always had this old medieval charm to it. But it's also had this modern, beyond the wall, like I was telling you, this modern city where, because a lot of the rulers also were not feudalistic in their, I mean, if the person who found Jaipur was way ahead of his time, I feel, Savai Jai Singh the second, because he was not a feudalistic ruler. I mean, he even moved beyond being a statesman to almost like an astrologer and a man of the probably 20th century, I feel, uh, uh, regarding what all he's done and what he's created. So I feel Jaipur has always had this fascination for modernization, which can actually backfire right now, because then you lose, uh, I mean, the old cultural fabric of the city. So, for example, we've lost the language of Jaipur, which is this dialect called Dhundari, which you still find
Is
a
it?
few is Dhundari. So, Dhundar is the region, like for Jodhpur, Marwar would be the region. So, Marwari becomes the local dialect. Or Mewar is Udaipur, so Mewari. So, Jaipur had this very distinct language, which was Kain Karriyo Chhu. It was a mix of, this little Gujarati, East Rajasthan blend of languages, which is almost completely dead now. There are some academies that are trying to revive it, but Jaipur is in that stage where it's in the constant struggle of trying to be modern in the right way, but also trying to protect its heritage and trying to balance all of these things out. But like I
Yeah.
said, we're very lucky. Like you said, Jaipur is in this stage of it's booming at the moment. There are lots of these little brands.
Fantastic development. Yeah.
It's the young people coming, local Jaipurites want to come back and work in Jaipur now. There are people in power that are very pro Jaipur that are trying to put it on the world map. But again, that can be a problem also. So, like I said, in tourism, you really see the impact of travelers coming to Jaipur. And it's also reaching a stage where we're managing it so badly that people are having to wait for 3 or 4 hours to visit the Amber Fort. There are traffic jams for 6 hours in a small little town like Jaipur. So
Oh
again,
no.
yeah, it's terrible, in fact. So again, that brings me back to Jaipur Houses, where I try and tell people to. I mean, you do the Amber Fort and City Palace and the Jantar Mantar, but there are so many of these little hidden monuments, including houses which are like mini monuments in themselves, to visit, where you can actually create and organize the traffic way better, in which you can spread everyone out. You can create different experiences rather than just have it focused on these big monuments or heritage sites. So it's an interesting time in Jaipur, and I think a lot of people are getting involved. So yeah, I mean, I can't really say where we're heading to. It's obviously impossible to gauge right now, but I'm hoping the city becomes this really pedestrian or e-rickshaw or something very, very simple, where there are no cars there, where people can walk, have access to all these Havelis, and the outside of the city kind of maintain uh, uh, the old world charm without, I mean, compromising on development. But yeah, it's very tricky. I mean, it really gets me confused also as to
Yeah, and the landscapes are so different, and the city is arranged in so many different ways. Yeah, but it's fantastic to see the scale of development that happens in Jaipur and large parts of Rajasthan with every government change. Rajasthan has this very funny,
ping
pattern
pong.
of
Yeah,
alternating the government.
for the last
It's
30,
good.
35 years, it's great. I mean,
I mean, I think it's worked for Jaipur, right? So,
I think the people in Jaipur also, I mean, they for some strange reason, they stop everything the previous government was doing. So any good work that any of the government has done, it's stopped by the other government. So it's
and then they start new stuff.
they sometimes start new stuff, but that is again stopped when the next government comes. So it's almost like a stalemate of sorts where nobody's letting each other. It's like a crab mentality of sorts because. But I mean, it's very politics is politics, like and
Yeah. I mean, and we're talking about people's homes that are run by, the family. So, and I do believe it's been like a fantastic journey for me, kind of exploring the city. Delhi is again as historic as Jaipur. A lot of much older roots in the city as well, but the city really, Delhi
shares.
is like old Delhi, New Delhi, much older Delhi than old Delhi, and then you have the whole East Delhi, West Delhi, South Delhi culture that are they have such robust identities of their own. For a fact what does a South Delhi person feel like. There are enough, and what do those homes look like, right? Then you go to like North Delhi, that is like the most hybrid, richest part of the city, because it has parts of the old, it has parts of the very, very new, and kind of more planned in New Delhi. And then it has parts of the in between. Then it has the university. So North Delhi is quite this fantastic space. you know and most of Delhi University is there. You have the old government part over there, the place where the Delhi Darbar happened, the Coronation Park, where still I remember in my childhood when I used to cross through North Delhi going to the university campuses. I remember there were these huge pedestals that were coming up, and on top of that were the kings and, all their lords with all their regalia on these statues. Look like Trafalgar Square in civil lines in Delhi. So
Yeah.
funny. But it was completely underdeveloped around those statues. It was ignored, much like what happened post-independent. A lot of colonials, extremely celebratory thing also got like, no need to pay so much attention to it. No need to break it, but no need to pay so much attention to it, right? So, those things happened. And but the city has so many different sort of histories that it feels there is so much to do. There are so many places to go, there are so many stories to be explored, and I hope I just have time. I want more time in a day to go and like stop. Sometimes I'm driving. Does this happen to you? Sometimes you're driving and you see a beautiful home and you want to pause, but you really have to be somewhere, you
all,
know
all the time. But it's worse. Listen, my attention is everywhere. My sister refuses to sit with me in the car right now. She's saying because I mean, and actually, that may be a good idea because I'm not concentrating on the road. It's just eyes everywhere else.
Yeah, I've started resorting to requesting people to drive me around instead of me driving because
No, but what you
because of
said
this.
about the amount of work is very true. I mean, it's almost a sense of a little feeling overwhelmed, not stressful overwhelmed. I mean, feeling overwhelmed in that aspect, but just, I mean, there's so much to do, and you feel there's little time to do it. So I totally agree with that. I mean, it's a constant feeling I have from time to time about, and
Yeah,
Delhi has
well,
so
sorry.
much more in terms of different cities and the history. It's probably, I mean, thrice or four times the age of Jaipur. So
Hey
it's
man, I think every city, every place, not even city, like big places in India are number one in being old. If you want to go deep, you can go real far back in this country in any city. I just feel.
I forgot I'm speaking to an archaeologist. Shit. All right, yeah, but yeah, it is. That's true. That's true. I mean, if you want to find antiquity and all, you every corner in it. That's the so that's what I talk to a lot of people. I've taken them for a walk a few times, and it's always a lot of people from the West or not from India who get shocked. I mean, it's almost embarrassing for us because they are almost taken aback by the lack of interest or preservation we're doing of these sites. And I get that a lot because I'm also working in the tourist field. That you guys, I mean, if we had a door in Italy, we would be preserving it. And if we had this, we had that. I mean, this is the way you should do it. So there's a lot of, and sometimes it does help, but it also puts you in a very, I mean, and that's why I think we as people who live in India have to have a little more confidence on at least the heritage structures because uh, I feel it's almost I don't want to reach a point where I mean like the tigers. I mean people and Jim Corbett in his book writes India was infested. That's the word with tigers and stuff. I mean India was synonymous with tigers, and suddenly at a point in the 70s we realized they extinct. So I'm
We're
just
running out.
we're running out. So I'm almost scared that that'll. I mean, and speak. I mean, I'm sure that'll not happen. But even if we go close to realizing that, oh God, all we have is like these big multi-story buildings and damaged old structures, and we reach a point of no return where it's. And we're lucky enough to have inherited all of these beautiful structures. I mean, stepwells and temples and old mosques and old forts and palaces. I mean, it's overwhelming the amount of stuff. Maybe that's what's made us complacent. That इधर भी है उधर भी है every colony में कुछ
You're
है.
so right about that. Yeah,
So
I know. I think we see so much antiquity and historicity all around us. It's so deeply ingrained in our historic consciousness as well that a large portion of us, I don't want to say taking for granted because you're blaming yourself, but the thing is, our lives are so full in India. It's called vibrant because every day is an adventure. In that, when you're looking at preservation costs, I think it's very complicated also with something being of great antiquity and you want to preserve it, so you try and get someone who's in the space to work on it, but they are right now at a premium, so you go to the government and the government is just like, it is old, so we need to preserve it, but let us own it for sometimes it becomes more complicated with the status of it being ahead. So people are really sort of baffled most of the time as to what should we do. We would love to make it look good, but it just costs so much. The other day I was in a small village, and it was a small village in Haryana actually, and I was standing with a family man, and I looked in front. The house had just built a small char diwari, four diwari for
yeah,
their buffalo, one buffalo. So I asked the family, how much did it cost you to build this char diwari and one little chajja so that the buffalo gets shade? Hmm? They said it cost them almost 55,000 to 60,000 in this village. So brick and mortar in this country and reparation and restoration has become so expensive. And when in cities, in villages, it's a different story sometimes, But in cities, if you go, you want the traditional methods of lipai, that's going to come at a premium, you
that's
know.
true.
In villages, however, you'll go out, you'll send a person, go to the, like how you have chickwalas in Jaipur and
Oh,
like
yes.
this kind of curtain chickwalas. They're everywhere. You'll send someone outside, one person will come and he'll put your chicks. So those construction like lipai and those welders and the carpenters are just there in the marketplace. You just go to them, they'll get it done. It's for nothing. So this kind of disparity is also kind of crippling the city. The city needs the city. A large percentage of our city is private architecture, homes, residential spaces, and if those are continue to be ignored and then completely pulled down and then rebuilt again, because it's just easier for families to do it, just pull this down and then rebuild again, and that's why we are losing very important moments of the architectural movements in our cities completely being they're vanishing at the speed of light. With newer and newer regulations. I think I have one rule with Delhi houses is that I do not document flats or homes that were built after 2012, because that's around the time that the houses on stilts, there was a regulation that was passed in the city where the houses were beginning to be built on stilts.
Oh,
So so you put a rule like that on architecture, on private residences, then the whole, it's like changing the fabric, a little bit of how the city or Indian architecture or Indian bungalows or Indian apartment complexes were built, right? So I don't document houses that are recent, but all those that are old. But I don't really go into the old city as you do, because Delhi has these absolutely fantastic documenters of the old city who live there, right? Who live there and tell us, and they're there, and everyone who I think who follows, a large portion of people who are into Delhi architecture, who follow Delhi houses, know those pages too. So I don't really go into that city, but sometimes when I find myself there, I cannot resist. I will do it.
mm,
But I do like to tell the story of like this absolute post-independence Delhi, post-partition Delhi, new Delhi, up till this 2012 period. A lot of 90s, a lot of 80s houses that were constructed a certain way. I think those stories that also come up by the aspirations of the family around that time, is so wonderful to sort of hear and sort of also share with people, you know. So, are there any time periods that you focus on curatorially?
no, but, I mean, like you said, I don't really go for houses that were built in the 2000s unless they've tried to. I mean, in Jaipur now, there's been this revival of architecture and old techniques and stuff. So there are places that are coming around in and around Jaipur that people are kind of making houses according to what the old style was, in lime, using karigars that were, the same families that have been doing Araish work or certain type of lipai. So I think I haven't really got any hard and fast rule as of now. I just have to like it, and it has to make I mean, a sense to me in terms of the heritage value of the place or historical value of the place or the value of the person staying there. Maybe there's someone who's done something very interesting, uh, which puts me again in a tricky spot because without being mean to someone, I don't want to be like, no, I can't come to your house because this is not something that I want to document. But there are lots of people. Oops, sorry, it was my internet was becoming a little unstable. But there are lots of, I mean, very sweet people who are so proud of where they're living and want me to come and document it. But I really don't think that fits the page of what Jaipur Houses is. So again, another tricky situation comes into play in which I go and
Yeah,
take pictures of the place. I don't always post it, or I post a certain element of it, which is nice. Uh, uh,
yeah.
but no, I really don't have any hard and fast rule as of now. It's just all over the place. I do need more structure, I think, for me to be able to cover more and for it to be less overwhelming. Uh,
Oh, the internal conversational structure for a person running a page like this.
is
Buddy, we share it. We share it. There's so many structures that you want to go for. And then, but then you have to go into people's homes to kind of, get that kind of story out there and put it in this framework and present it to people. But there's so many different moving pieces, of finding the homes, getting access to the homes, getting to talk to the people, getting time to think about everything that they have said, to download it and then write it, and then this, and so many. Yeah, I bet you must have so many arrow diagrams of, this is a little bucket of beautiful history that I would like to tell. This is another bucket, right?
I have to slowly start moving towards creating a Google Doc or something with the names and stuff. It just makes it very serious and all of that. But yeah, I think that's the only way of kind of doing it. But I think even you must have faced that later. I mean, I've started getting that now, is that people are calling us home and stuff instead of me going, can I please come to your house, or sending a message saying that this is who I am and this is what I want to do, where usually you get no response at all. Uh, so I think it's more incoming as of now, which is really makes me happy because it means that people are proud of what their homes and stuff. And a few of them even ask money that, oh, how much do you charge and what's the cost for the teacher? And of course, I always, and that's something that I want to actually be very, very strict with myself about, is never charging anyone for being featured on this page or
Yes.
a book if I write about it, because and it's not about me being all academic. I do want it to support, but I have things like a walk or different things that I've thought about, like branches of the main Jaipur Houses page that can earn me a little money so that I can support it. But the archive that I'm creating, I will never take money for it. I mean, even if someone offers me whatever X amount of money or something. And I do have to work. I mean, my parents don't run these businesses that I can, depend upon. I mean, they're both from working families and working people, and I have to also work. But this is something I'm very strict about because it also puts you in a position to, I mean, then you have to listen to what the other person who's paying you is telling you that I want this to be featured, I want this to be shown. So that's something I completely avoid.
Yeah.
And I don't also do any advertisements. I mean, like you've got to be opening a cafe right now, or this is this business we're doing, or I've had lots of close friends of mine, and I love them. But telling me, "Oh, my wife has started this sari business, and why don't you guys work together and like do a shoot?" And I said, "That's not me. I'm not like a stylist or a visual director or someone." So we're like, "No. All you have to do is in an old home, just put the sari and just do it and stuff." And at that time, I have to be a little firm with them, which I think a lot of my friends don't like, because a lot of people also, of course, they're trying to run businesses and trying to promote and push their place. And people assume this is a platform for everything, whether it comes to some vintage saris or jewelry or something. I mean, my own mom does jewelry, and my sister wanted me to kind of do something, and she was a little annoyed with me. She was like, "How can you blatantly say no without even thinking about it?" And that she felt a little, I think, taken aback with. But I have to be, and forgive my language, an ass about this, because when it comes to the page, I don't want it to be an advertisement or property listing, site. And I feel it's a lot to do. I mean, I was watching a video of yours yesterday where you were introducing yourself, and then the second sentence was, "I am not a property listing site," which actually made me laugh out loud because I can really
Yeah.
resonate with that. And a lot of people
Yeah,
don't. I
because
mean,
I
they really don't
also,
understand. It's almost unthinkable to them.
and I think the why of it is primarily because, a lot of people trust you and, share the story of a house, whether it's architecture or family, with you, and you feature their home on your platform with the assurance that, no, like, I don't put addresses unless the person is okay with it, right? Or insists upon it. And I also see curatorially if I want to put it. But you do it because you're archiving, right? And you have a responsibility to all the houses that you have visited, that you do not sort of divulge these personal informations about the availability of their homes or the location of their homes, so that sometimes, like, I know you are mapping it out, right? Like, mapping it in a way of regions. I'm mapping it in a way of like architectural styles, whatever my curatorial thing would be. But when people come and ask those things, yeah, I feel very worried because I do want to explain to them the why of it, as to why am I saying I don't think that may be a good idea for a person like me, but somebody else who has an eye like, or kind of engaged in that zone may be able to help you. But yeah, it's very daunting to kind of explain that to people, you know.
It is
Yeah.
because people, I think, don't, they're like, you get a commission out of this, and you get this, and you get that. And I say, no, it's not. I mean, it's not. It's not about that. It's just maintaining what the purpose of the page is. And of course, then I mean, I am working on a few branches of Jaipur Houses that can earn me a little bit of money so that it supports itself and it helps other people, the local, people, artisans and artists and stuff. But yeah, it's quite amusing to. But again, that thing happens about, so a lot of people, and I don't know what you think about this. Have you ever got the question about an app? That, "Oh, why don't you guys have an app for for Jaipur Houses where you open it and all these mapped spots kind of just come up and it's an easy place for people to." What do you think about it, if I can ask?
Well, I think it's a hard no for me in terms of the app, but
Okay.
but yes, a lot of people have come up with a lot of business ideas and told me the potential with a platform like this is very interesting. You must explore. You must explore. And I find it I find it very heartwarming when people are so interested in it. But I
Yeah.
just end the conversation by saying mine is an archival process, and this is a process that I will be doing my entire life. I will just be
Right.
urgently, not urgently, like every day I wake up in the morning and I go and all I do is eat, breathe, live Delhi houses. No, but I have taken on this responsibility of constantly trying to document homes of Delhi in different ways. But this is not, anything other than archival, and it has no business intent,
Right.
and it has no business time. It is not certified in that way. It's just a blog. Let me just, like, I sometimes devalue it in front of people. I said it is a blog. It is a public blog for people to read about the city. So
Right.
yeah.
And so what do you do about then? And we've discussed this before also. And I mean, I'm just asking you these few things because I think you have way more experience when it comes to dealing with these things because you've been running the page from before. But in terms of pictures being taken, because I know both of us don't really put a watermark on our pictures or uh, uh, add any element of ourselves in the photography that we're doing. So how do you deal with, because I've been having a little issue regarding that and we have spoken about it, but what is the
Yeah, we
best
did
way
speak
to,
about it.
because I mean,
I
I'm really
think,
happy to give give my pictures to someone again working in the academic space. I mean, I don't think that's a problem, but the problem arises when someone, puts their own watermark on your pictures and promotes their page for brand promotions and stuff like that. And it really aggravates me because these people also don't respond to you and it's not even about money. Even sometimes it's just a little line of credit that one
yeah,
needs.
I think
And
in those, that's when that's happened in those cases, it's a very straightforward and direct message or outreach that I do to them, where this is a house of another person. Um, Even I do not have the right permissions to allow you to use this. This was used on my platform and so on so date. So kindly remove this picture from using it. I just like say kindly remove it. If they come to me that can we put it with your permission, then that's another conversation that requires a multiple step process of taking permission from whose home it is, blah blah blah. Yeah, for me, yeah, I get really worried about that. It's really rude for people to do that. And yeah, it takes a lot of unnecessary time to kind of fix that.
yeah,
Yeah.
all of a
Yeah.
sudden we
So
resort to what you had mentioned about just sending a really exorbitant amount invoice to them and being like, thank you for your services.
that was the joke that I was cracking. Yes, just be like, thank you for using my image. This is what it is priced at.
Even if it's a
Kindly
fake
put
invoice,
it.
it doesn't matter. It's just to scare them a little
Yeah,
bit and just kind of
yeah,
inform.
yeah. Why not? Why not? I mean, museums sell images, and if it's your own photograph and you are a photographic page, you could consider yourself as an artist, and that's your work, you know. So,
Yeah.
they are soliciting your work. So, yeah, that was the joke. But Bharat, it has been so fantastic
Oh,
after
yes.
so many years of kind of being in touch and watching each other's work ardently and enjoying it thoroughly, that we get to talk today. It
I
has
know
been so fantastic. This conversation is funny. I love it.
it's odd that it's already been an hour because I mean, I thought it was like half an hour or something right now, which just shows. I mean, I think we should again meet and talk whenever you are free, of course. Uh,
Yes, yes. And tell
there's a,
each other tales of the cities.
oh, yeah, and there's a lot more I have to ask you also. So whenever, I mean, like silly stuff, I mean, but just I think because you bring a lot of experience to the table. Uh, so yes, I mean, it's been lovely, and I think Khyati wants us to stop
Yes,
because we've
yes,
crossed
I
that.
got Khyati's message. I will be
Oh,
listening
yeah,
to her. She's our boss of the citizen for today during this call. But it's been
oh,
fantastic, Bharat, and thank you so much for the work you do. This summer, I wish you lots of luck and lots of sunscreen for all the photos of the city that you're going
oh,
to
yes.
take.